shall make it stay. Make it strong. From barriers to breakthrough, we stand with pride. Sedulous collective, we're by your side. Always.
I need a moment to process everything that I've just heard, because we deliberately chose the title, Tokenism versus True Participation. We deliberately subtitled that as blurred lines, and I think what we've heard tonight from these speakers is that if we're looking in the right places and we're taking the right approach, we can actually unblur the lines. We can simplify the complexities of some of the challenges that we face in order to find solutions that suit everybody. I'm hearing like a piece of it from each of you. But that's just me. Like so many other people in the room, so many other pairs of ears in the room. I'm wondering if anybody is like burning to ask a question now, because now we get to really, they think they were on the spot, but now we're really going to put them on the spot. Because there may be something that was said here that you feel was maybe unclear, or maybe not quite sure about, or you want to hear more about. Now's the time to say. I have the little magic mic, so I can come and get you to... who would like to start? Big topic, tokenism. Yes.
Thank you.
Just don't press any buttons, otherwise Raquel is going to get you.
No worries. My name's Nzinga Asata, and I'm a Pan-Africanist and a Ghanaian, or long-standing. One of the things that came to me as the sister in the middle was speaking was about referring to ourselves as racial minority, or actually global majority people. And so we perhaps need that to be incorporated into our young people. I really loved your presentation, because this is exactly what we need to be doing, organising ourselves. And this ego-driven organising has to stop if we are actually going to bring the change that we need to have. And this sister's presentation, I also loved what you had to say, because it is so important, in my opinion. I've been organising in the community for a long time, and I'm 74 now, and you don't see the change that you know must happen if we're going to actually move forward, and we can't keep complaining. So that's really what I'd like to say. So thank you.
Much appreciated. I'm sort of paraphrasing or leading on from something that you just said, which is about when we talk about tokenism, we're also, I think, referring to that burden of representation that we sometimes feel, and the burden of representation being the first, being the only. Like, enough of that already. That should not even be the conversation, because we want to move on from there. We want to. I don't know if Dr. Ali, would you like to respond to the comment?
Oh yeah, thank you. Yes, I would.
Absolutely,
I totally agree. And like, we're currently writing some of it up, and we've used global majority. The reason we say racially minoritized, not racial minorities, racially minoritized, is because we were talking about processes of minoritization, and we thought that picked that out. So yeah, it's about what's happening that means some people are excluded or suffering from inequalities.
That was in a local context. Your project was London.
That's London-wide, so we did speak to people across.
So it was the context. It's true that language doesn't need to be balanced out. It doesn't need to be discussed and fully understood. Really, it is important for the next generation.
Hello, my name's Penny, and I am British Jamaican, even though visibly others think I'm from somewhere else. The reason I mention that is that in our communities, what we represent isn't always acknowledged. And my question is, tokenism versus true participation. How can one participate? Move on from the old, what we say we are, and what we would like to do, what changes that we can have. How can one be active and truly represent who we are, where we're coming from, and moving forward with the next generation? Because what I find, being educated in Jamaica, coming here, a lot of it dies with us. And that goes for any kind of wherever we are in the world. And that's important for people to truly stand up and participate if they recognize where they're from, what we're about, and what we are potentially and are actually in our communities.
Well, as someone, lots of people always used to say to me, oh, Ashley, poacher turned gamekeeper, particularly when I went into politics. But you have to be intentional. And one of the issues, and this is the thing, because I have seen things start to slip backwards in who's leading, who's in power, really makes a difference. The whole issue around kind of allyship or not allyship, a lot of people say that they're allies, but the blurred lines around kind of representation, this is the joke thing. So yes, you come to our meetings and you are here to represent, but we're not going to listen. We'll hear what you have to say, but we're not going to take it on board. Oh, we're going to say that we have resources available, but hey, you're not going to get any of those resources because we're going to make it difficult for you to have those resources. And so this is about the collective action. That's why I keep saying it's so important. It can't be just one individual so-called representing. I think what we had in the city, and maybe it's just something that we were doing for many, many years, is we built the kind of infrastructure. We have an exemplary, I call it, they represent black excellence, but we have an exemplary intermediary organisation in Bristol called Black South West Network. And I built that organisation about maybe 25, 30 years ago. The organisation is well respected by everybody in the city because it's still rooted in community, but in terms of how it delivers and how it represents and its voice, and it is consistently always making sure that the community is represented, whether they're dealing with sexual enterprise, whether they're dealing with decolonisation, because they're doing some work around that, whether it's community wealth building and asset building, but also talking truth to power. But I know it can be really difficult because you actually have to have, like I said, intentional leadership within those structures. So when I brought those 17 CEOs together, I did it on a basis of, we found a load of crap going on in Bristol City Council, but trust me, I know the same crap going on in my organisation is going on in your organisation. So if we're going to address race inequity and all the other rubbish that is going on, we're going to do it collectively as a city. So hey NHS, hey MOD, hey police, hey magistrate, all of us, we're going to sit in a room and we're going to look at what our data is telling us, and we're going to point the dial, and collectively, how are we going to work together? But always consistently, BSWN, race, or all of the other race organisations, even the Somali Resource Centre, always checking back in and making sure that they are checking back in with the community, because it's important to kind of speak truth to power. And it was also important to make sure that we are truly representatives through the kind of global majority. So I'm not going to pretend I'm not from the Somali community. I'm British born Jamaican, yes, but I want to make sure that the vast global majority that are represented in my city are also sitting alongside me at the table also. And it's also speaking to the kind of power brokers and the leaders in the room that they need to understand you haven't got the answers. If you keep doing the same thing, you get the same result, and that's what has been going on. I feel like I've just been on this mouse wheel for the last 30, 40 years, and nothing hasn't changed. In fact, everything's just getting worse. Educational outcomes, and employment, you name it, housing. Nothing hasn't changed for us, so we have to change. We have to somehow change up that game. But I hear what you're saying about people kind of losing their identity, and because people who come from their own country come here quite can change the world. But then racism, because remember, a lot of us haven't, those who were born abroad haven't experienced the kind of racism that is meted out to them on a day-to-day basis, and it, not only irks your soul, but it completely kind of drains you. So there is no, it just depends on what is going on in your borough, in your city, what the leadership looks like, and that's why it's also important to step up. Because the only reason why I wanted to make some change is that I was big and bad enough to say, I'm going to go for council. I'm going to, I didn't want to I wasn't expecting to end up being the deputy mayor. But in order to make the difference, you've got to move into those power spaces, and one of those is about thinking about becoming a local leader, local councillor.
And Penny, you're here tonight. You're part of the collective.
So how can I participate?
We'll give you the QR code of
Sorry, I don't
I'm
know.
not even joking. We're offering membership to everybody here tonight because if if you're on board with us, if you're on board with what we're saying, and if you're on board with what the speakers are sharing with you, then clearly you need to sign up with us. It's free to join, but it's, as we said, as I heard you say, it does cost something to really put yourself out there and get into the right rooms and speak to the right people and make change. So don't leave without scanning the QR code, please. Any more questions? Yes.
Sorry, first of all, thank you very much to everyone on the panel. This is going to be a bit of a half-baked question because obviously there's been a lot of information thrown out over the past 3 talks. There is, I think, somewhere within this a kind of like, I guess the idea that comes to mind in terms of collective power is and I'm going to get this wrong, but I heard of the Aboriginal, it's called the AIATSIS, which is the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies. And it's, from what I know, it's an ethics board and committee which stands as a gatekeeper between the government and various different bodies and the communities that it represents. It has been very effective, from what I've been told, at ensuring that research is done with the participation of the communities, with the participants of the beneficiaries, essentially. Though I can't help but think that, in essence, we face a different struggle in the sense that, like, for instance, the African diaspora is in and of itself a multitude of cultures with varying different needs and wants, and some attitudes being more conservative than others. Getting to the question, do the panel members see this as an issue? Do they see potential for there being a committee that could potentially represent collectively, like being an ethics board, a committee that would that be localized? Would it be a national thing? Basically, what are your thoughts and views on this? And do you think there's even appetite? I think you were saying that there was, but yeah.
See to the academics, and then I'll maybe come back on what you're saying in terms of
Defining the monolith.
Yeah, and who should represent that, and can that be represented, or how might that be represented? I've come across you, Danny, in other spaces. You always come with the big questions, so good to see you're just being as consistent as ever with your presence today. Glad I got that question first. I want to speak as it comes to me on this, because I don't know that I have an answer. I think it's complex. It's complex from different levels. It's complex from a representation perspective. So in terms of how, with us, we're often asked to research the Black community, the Black, African and Caribbean communities, and help us understand why they do this, don't do this, take the vaccine, don't take the vaccine, whatever else it is. And so to your point, we're constantly pushing back on this idea that there's a monolith about who we are. We've talked about, intersectional identities. We're migrants, we're movers, we're first, second, third generation. The experiences of my mother who founded our organisation are significantly different to the lived experience and therefore perspectives of myself, and now we're running an organisation together. So I think to boil down this thing called Black, this thing called Black, African and Caribbean, we're talking about continents and countries and hundreds of years of healed and broken histories and stories. I don't know the answer to the question about is there a single body or should there be a single type of body that represents that, but what I do know is that our stories need to maintain their authenticity at the level at which they exist, which is at a human level. My story is my story, your story is your story. I was mentioning earlier when I've got a 6-month-old child, and I'm so conscious that her great-grandparents are gone. There's nobody left in my family with a Jamaican or Dominican accent. And I'm like, how will this child know where they come from? So take them back home. I'll be doing that. I'm coming with you. So I think that stories matter, individual stories matter. The extent to which we can document our individual stories and keep the authenticity in those, I think that is key. How we collect those stories, I think, probably works best at those hyper-local levels, because it requires love, it requires relation, it requires trust that doesn't have to be worked out or earned as part of the process. I think I completely obviously agree with the final speaker here. Actually, sorry, my brain just gone blank around the collectivity. I do think it's challenging, and I know that you'll have thoughts about this already, but I'll say in this safe space room that part of what I was thinking of when you were saying that was like, yes, this is where I want us to be, this is where I want to get to. That would enable, if we wanted to go down that kind of like main collective representation of all of us, if there's some dispersed leadership that keeps it local as well, there's probably some sort of like top-down, bottom-up thing that needs to happen. But I'm also mindful of the legacy of historical trauma in our communities, which I think also contributes to the way that we do work sometimes. And you were really kind of fair about mentioning that, we've had to be preservationists, we've had to maybe look after ourselves, but I actually don't think that's even the whole problem. While there is hypervigilance and there is trauma, I think part of the systemic issue, and whilst we don't want to put all our hopes and dreams on the system, which may ever change, is that it's also designed often to keep us fragmented as well. So I'm often asked to see applications that say, we welcome collective consortium applications, but you've got 6 weeks to do it and it's £1 million. Okay, well, I don't know 7 organisations off the bat that I have deep enough, long enough relationships with that I can reasonably build a joint application for this fund, right? But they pitch it in that way. They don't pitch that when they are putting funders out to universities, or they're allowed them to stand as single, credible organisations on their own. But we have to form collectives on their terms, in their time, on their, and so. I think there is still a systemic element and barrier to the way we can do that meaningfully. And I was so glad to hear from Savannah. We talked, about, we just met in the last kind of month or so. There's a journey that we are going to go on. What's great that we're here because we want to do it, and to your word, intentionality, we want to do that. But there's a journey. And so I think there's a process to all of that. So I think that's part of the challenge and opportunity of kind of bringing us all together. And love and healing and restoration for what has brought us to the place where we might not all be sitting kumbaya in the room. I think we have to give ourselves grace for that as well, because there has been a systemic, deliberate dismantling of our connectivity, and that rebuilding takes time whilst we want to try to survive and keep our kids safe. Danny, I've got all off. I think I've got to some sort of top down and some sort of bottom up, but something's got to be hyper local because the individual stories matter, and the collectivism needs to happen, but it also needs to include restorative justice, systemic support, and we give ourselves time and grace as we go on this journey, and recognise our relative different resources and privileges as well, I think, on that journey, and have grace for each other on that journey.
Can I just add to what Nadine has just said? And I think over the last 7 weeks, I've done 2,500 miles. I've gone from the south all the way up to the north. I've been checking on the region because I've got this money that I want to deploy in our communities as enterprise development grants, funded finance, call it what you will. But I was doing the rest. I was checking out what is really going on in the southwest, the southeast, Birmingham, West East Midlands. And the further I was going up north, the weaker or kind of non-existent of the ecosystem, the short, sharp, shrift, dismissive treatment of our people by the very said system that claims that we're about community building and equity and all of that, but the same local authority bonfire of the assets, stripping out and taking everything away from our communities. Many of them our parents built, and they are now struggling because all they want to do is sell it to the highest bidder and freak the community. They don't even care. It's like they don't even care anymore. And so my message when I was in each region is because everyone's desperate. So this is the thing. This is what happens to us in our community. So I'm introducing halfway. This is what we're here to do. And as soon as I mentioned I got money, I want to deploy the region. Suddenly everybody will know, we'll organise a partnership, we'll make sure everything's ready. No, I said no, that is not how it runs. You're not going to sit here over the next 3, 4, 5 months and think you can put together this perfect partnership and make it run. But there is I am going to put pressure on, and I'm saying to my colleagues and my daughters have told me, you need to stop saying this. But I've said it to them and to my white counterparts, and I feel no way. Because I'm here to stand on the neck. I am here, right? Because if you all think that I have this £12 million that I'm going to deploy and TikTok, that's the black sector sorted out with money from dormant assets. That's not gonna. I can spend that 12 million in one region in 6 months, and it still looks like the same. Do you understand me? So I'm going to have some really difficult decisions that I've made, but doing that recce and finding out the strengths and weaknesses of the sector. I'm actually going back because I'm saying to them, you need to get your act together, right? Because in order for me to be in a position where I'm going to deploy any funding or even access, this is where I'm standing on the next of the mainstream. I'm saying, you're the ones who have failed us, You're the ones who've got the money. You've got the 6 million and 10 million that the combined authority has given you, and you've failed to fund and support black-led social enterprises for whatever reason. Some of them can't even look me in my eye. The further north I went, the gaze was, when I'm asking the question straight, how many black organisations have you funded and supported? They can't tell me anything. But the system is broken. It's like the ecosystem. And something is deliberate, I feel it feels like it's been deliberate just over the years, just eroding of the infrastructure and lack of investment and all of that. So I'm spinning everything on top of its head, and I'm holding the combined authorities, I'm holding the local authorities to account. I'm in these rooms with Number 10 and others and saying to them, okay, we can make the announcements of the £500 million, but let's not get it twisted. You're not going to do the same thing that you always do. You make your big announcement, and it's the usual suspects, and it's the usual gatekeepers, and it's the same old. If we're going to do this properly, we need to be in those rooms with the civil servants who have no idea most of the time how to construct and make something happen. And so for me, that's where I was getting frustrated, because I'm sitting in these rooms and thinking, I can't split myself 100 ways to be going here, there, and everywhere. This isn't the Asher Craig show. This isn't necessarily just the Pathway Fund show. This is this is all of us, and I should be able to call on my colleagues running BEO or Baobab or Ubeli and whoever, and I should be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, I need you to go to number 10, to go to this policy lab, we're talking on child poverty, but we need to have you in the room, or somebody who has, because the other thing I was doing was also looking at best practice, because there are some great things that are happening in local communities and regions that Pathway, I'm willing to invest and scale and bring it to other regions, particularly around the green agenda and also around asset acquisition. But it means building the ecosystem. But you've got to get some of the egos and the gatekeepers out of the way, because we're our own worst enemy also. It's not just about the racism that is going on, but the way in which some people are gatekeeping in certain communities. Because I was quite surprised to see some of the same old faces. And I'm like, you guys need to get, and I've seen some young people in the room, and I'm saying the next time I come back here, you young people need to be in this room. I'm expecting you to lead the charge, because some of these elders need to, no disrespect to the elders, but I'm an elder. No, I'm an elder. I'm an elder, believe it or not. And but yeah, we've got to bring the kind of new generation through, but there is no kind of fixed answer, and it's not one size fits all. But the one thing I recognised when we were in Bristol, we identified, whether it was the Polish community, Somali community, the new African migrants communities and refugees that were coming in our city. We recognised their difference and made sure that we were delivering services to them and meeting them where they were at, and trying to also understand the cultural nuances of how you kind of address that. But trust me, now we're no longer in the room. I've heard that even the corporate strategy that the council did this year doesn't even mention race in it. It's completely disappeared out of their agenda because it's too difficult. No disrespect, but it's too difficult for white people to deal with. They don't know how to deal with it, and that's why the city of Bristol got away with what it got away with so long, until me and Marvin came into power and thought, hey, no, let's readjust, let's recalibrate somehow. And we had 8 years to try and make a difference, but this is the thick swing and pendulum. We went that way, and it slowly feels like it's going back there again. And some black people, because of our experiences, because trust me, we experienced a lot of racism in that wonderful city of ours, that it put off a lot of black people who, because I'm saying you need to go into politics, but they're like, no, actually, we saw what happened to you and Marvin, we can't, so it works against us. On the one hand, we know what we need to be doing, but the system makes us afraid to even express it.
Can I ask what Danny thinks?
Yeah, Danny, I was going to question.
I was going to say the speaker referred to a committee, but I don't know that you were necessarily.
Not a committee.
I don't know if the right word is committee.
Was it political?
Actually being able to come together and agreeing on base needs that they all need. And I think that there needs to be like some cultural humility maybe within certain communities. But again, I guess that it's a balance between meeting people where they are and also trying to push things forwards. Like, as someone who has a lot of queer friends, it's kind of really hard for me to see that there's the most progressive kind of forward-thinking attitudes I see tend to happen in Black queer communities. The ones that kind of have the greatest amount of love and are really transformative, whilst also being adamant about pushing things forward and being competitive against the system. So I struggle with their exclusion and the fact that they don't sit at a lot of tables. So for me, it's really about like, okay, the conversations, like the board is basically, the equity board is just like a vessel in order to facilitate conversations that we should be having. So that's the way I kind of see it. And if we can resolve those differences, then we can, then also like, okay, now you've got me going. But like, there's also the issue of just like, we haven't really, like, it's been touched upon, but the fact that like capitalism plays such a big part and that like so many good organizations are scrambling to get coins to stay alive, and that equally that those who selected essentially the tokenism is because those in power, typically white people in power, are able to select who sits at the table. And therefore, if you are not adhering to their standards or to their kind of views, then you're likely not to get selected, then you're likely not to get paid. So that's again why it comes down to the board as being this barrier that's saying like, no, almost creating a picket fence that no one crosses. That once we have established these ethics, that it's so that we do not engage unless it meets these criteria that we have all agreed upon.
Criteria. Thank you. Very interesting. Anybody else? Let's see if we can.
Before we let you out.
Let you out of the room.
Hi, thank you guys very much for explaining and kind of like going into depth of what's going on. So my name is Melissa, and I'm the founder of Bridge the Gap Ending Poverty. And it allowed me, while I'm sitting in this space right now, to kind of like sit back and kind of like reflect upon where I've come from 2020 during COVID, where I am now. And being in, it's true what you say in terms of you have to be in those spaces. If you're not in those spaces and kind of like speaking with those people, you are actually left behind, but it's also you having that voice as well. So I'm neurodiverse myself, and a lot of the times, like throughout my years, I've had that fear of speaking up. Whereas in over being like the CEO of Bridge the Gap for the last 5 years, it's allowed me to grow my confidence to be and show up in those spaces. This session right here, I wouldn't have come to it years ago because I was timid. I was thinking, like, what if, I'll be looked at differently, or, maybe I don't fit into those spaces. But when do you fit into those spaces? You have to then change that mindset about you and then be able to be bold enough to step out of your comfort zone and then empower everyone else around you. So I just wanted to just raise that awareness to everyone as an empowerment, should I say, message, and don't underestimate what you can actually do, because the power is actually within you, and it's about you using your voices, and that's how we make change. Yeah, thank you.
So I was sitting here, and as you were talking, I was thinking, no, actually, you've got to remember you work for Pathway now, you're not still at the council. But something else that I do in my spare time, I only have spare time, but in my spare time, because like I said, I split my time between Bristol, I still split my time between Bristol and London. And back in 2016, when we were looking at like the race disparity and what was going on in our city, one of the things that black staff I kept asking staff, how come the first 3 layers of the top 3 layers in the organisation, why isn't there anybody who looks? We didn't even have any Asian staff, no Chinese staff. It was all white staff from the director level down to the head of service. Because that was the first thing I did when I came into the council. I wanted to look at what is going on in this organisation. But fast forward, about 6 months later, and this is again in the spirit of working as one city and saying we're all struggling with this issue. It was the black staff were saying to us, oh, Asha, I went on a leadership program 10 years ago, and I was trying to kind of step up and what have you. And I'm like, so what happened? Oh, I'm still doing the same job that I was doing like 10 years ago. So the play lip service, they'll, oh yeah, we'll put on a leadership course, but basically we'll still keep you where you are. And I thought, I'm going to change that up. And all I will say is that I run a program, you can look it up, it's called the Stepping Up Leadership Program. When I started, I piloted 25 25 black leaders, because we worked with the data. We said we want to bring up the leadership in the city right across all of the different sectors. The demand was so great, the pilot started with 57 black people in the room. And 2 weeks ago, we had our 10th and 11th graduation for our cohorts. 870 people we have put through, and those 870 people have all gone on to step up into bigger, badder, better roles. And if they haven't stepped up in their organisation, they've stepped out to enable themselves to step up. And stepping up doesn't necessarily also mean, oh, I've got a bigger, higher paid job, though most of them have done. They've decided that they're going to become a NED, a non-exec director on the NHS board, or they've joined the children's governing board and school and all of that. But what we did was we measured everybody's confidence at the beginning of the course, and it's like this. But by the time they finish, it's like this. And that's what they said. They said even after the first session, some of them felt brave enough to be ready to and go for this job. And they went for the job and they got the job. And then one woman has stepped up every year for the last 4 years. And she's now a director in the NHS. And she was just a little program lead somewhere. But yeah, we gave her that confidence. And I keep thinking, I need to bring this to London, because hearing what you're saying, I'm thinking, yeah, we need, again, be purposeful, be intentional, but also the organisations ensuring that they're actually taking that talent that is coming through.
Because if everybody assumes that somebody's doing something about it, then nobody does
Exactly.
anything. So it's always better to just put your best foot forward anyway.
And that's the thing, sorry, can I just add to it? Sorry, now that my mind just thinks about it. So in the line of work that we do things at the grassroots level. We go out into the community and we're meeting people where they are, and that's what we do all the time. But then one thing that really stands out to me, that there is so many minority people that's actually out there that's got so much talent. And again, because we do digital poverty, if you think about it, people who do not have access to these devices or much less data to get online, they're the one that's being held back, which means, number one, if they don't know even how to, try to apply for housing benefit or whatever it is that's going to develop their career, they then held back, which then goes into mental health, like you were saying. There's just so many different avenues and stuff or pathways that people actually go down. So it's about all of us working together as a collective. It's not just like one size fits all, like what you were saying.
Yeah, and also the one thing I will say, because what's really interesting, I come from a city, so we're dealing with everything on a city. Coming here in London, it gets even more complex because you've got 32 London boroughs, and trust me, you can't cross a road and you can't spend the money on that side of the road because now you're in Sutton as opposed to whatever the next, So it's complex. It's complex, and even in our listening tours, the last one we did, people from Greenwich, oh Asha, we get left behind, or so it feels like resources, or there's a concentrate of effort, even in some of the funding that has gone to black communities, social enterprises in London. It feels like there is only certain boroughs, So I'm having to think in my head, okay, if we're going to do the London one, I might have to be more specific, because we just need to look at the data and say, something, we want to target for the first 18 months, we want investment into five of the 32 boroughs, because the disparity is quite clear. But yeah, you have to be purposeful and intentional, but also explain to people why you have to make some of the decisions that you have to make, because trust me, I am not looking forward to having to explain to people how I'm going to deploy money, but I hope everyone will understand. 12 million doesn't go very far, trust me.
Thank you so much. That's really.
Oh, what, you're done with us?
Well, no, we're not letting you. You're not leaving yet. We're actually going to sort of move the discussion into, as I said before, the other part of the venue. We're going outside. There is an indoor area. You don't feel that you have to go out into the garden, but we just thought you might appreciate a bit of fresh air and also stretch your legs. But please carry on talking. Penny, I'm serious. If you leave tonight without scanning the QR code for membership, we are going to have words. Everybody, please, consider yourselves welcome. You'll see the sign will be up for you. There are signs dotted around. But we do want you to become members of the collective, and we do want you to start advancing these conversations. This is not one conversation. This is not a one and done. We didn't save the world tonight, but we took a step closer to a more positive world, a more positive sense of equity. So can we please keep the momentum, scan for membership. You'll see it also, there's a membership page now on the website. But the codes will be provided for you when you go into the back for food, drink, talk, conversation, fresh air, all the rest of it. So this is not the last we will be seeing each other, I hope and pray. Okay, let's keep this going. Thank you very, very much for being here and being so patient with the heat and the time and the tech and everything else. But please do follow the team that way, not out the front door, but that way to the garden area, and help yourselves to food and drink.